Hello there. I'd like to open this video with a brief thank you to everyone who watched the iceberg video and felt like sticking around. I truly have a huge amount of gratitude for faith in my ability to entertain, especially considering just how vast the world of entertainment is in this day and age. I will go more into detail about the future of my channel at the end of this, so stick around for that if you'd like. But in the interest of giving you what you came for first, let's get into the actual video. Okay. Ludonarrative dissonance is a very simple and fairly helpful little buzzword when it comes to talking about games. If we break that bad boy down, it becomes much easier to understand. The word ludic is simply used to describe something as spontaneous, fun, or playful. Narrative is an extremely common word for story, and a dissonance is a disconnect or incompatibility. Put that sucker back together and you get a phrase that describes the disconnect between story elements and gameplay elements in a video game. This term was created by Clint Hocking, and it was used specifically to critique BioShock, but another key point in his analysis was that the dissonance is present in most games today, and it's one of the biggest problems that needs to be overcome in the world of game development, as Hocking is a developer himself. Now, there are ways in which I agree with him and ways in which I disagree, which I know is the biggest argumentative cop-out in the world, but trust me, I intend to fully explain myself in the next however many minutes this video is. And the only way to do that is by breaking down his analysis of BioShock, and why it led him to where it did. You see, Hocking claims that BioShock's ludic contract is seek power and you will progress, and that its narrative contract is help Atlas and you will progress. In his words, the ludic contract works really well in BioShock because it's backed up mechanically through gameplay. The moral quandary of the Little Sisters is, in his mind, a perfect extension of this contract, because it speaks to a very real gameplay need, the need to obtain more powerful plasmids. But he says that the narrative contract effectively derails the entire game, because right from the beginning, the player is presented with the Randian principles of Andrew Ryan, which value choice and force the player to contemplate the concept of freedom. And so, when the big twist happened to Hocking, he was angry and felt insulted. Insulted for suspending his own disbelief in order to buy into what Atlas was telling him, and then angry that the structure of the game didn't change much after the encounter with Ryan. There was still only one path to the end. He almost stopped playing in protest before deciding to finish the game for the sake of finishing it. And this is the issue that he says is one of the great unclimbable mountains in the world of video game development. At the end of the day, the player must do the correct series of steps to complete the game, and it's very hard to make those steps align flawlessly with whatever story the devs are trying to tell, and it's downright impossible to make that story align with the actions the player may wish to take. Thus, ludonarrative dissonance. Would Arthur Morgan have spent days of his life riding around aimlessly looking for buried treasure during the slow decay of the only family he has left? Probably not, no. Would the Dragonborn become Archmage at the College of Winterhold, get married to a woman from Whiterun, live in a house in solitude, and become a highly decorated member of an underground community of criminals in Riften? Hell, would Mario jump on thousands of turtles and autonomous mushrooms, travel through every climactic condition imaginable in only a pair of overalls, and fight a huge dragon man all on his own to save the princess? I mean, no, he probably wouldn't go about it like that. It seems like there would be a better, military strategy for the Mushroom Kingdom he could come up with, and that would more realistically secure the safety of the princess rather than him just going on his own, like a hostage type scenario. I don't know. And this is the problem that Hocking is discussing, the problem that developers need to solve, right? I don't think so. I think as much as BioShock may have been improved by a more branching story with a huge array of endings, I think Hocking's experience with BioShock would have been improved dramatically if he were simply a different kind of player. That's not meant as a jab, but I can't be the only person that found his approach to BioShock a little unusual. Let me read this excerpt about how he dealt with the Little Sisters. Quote, "The game literally made me feel a cold detachment from the fate of the Little Sisters, who I assumed could not be saved, or even if they could, would suffer some worse fate at the hands of Tenenbaum. Harvesting them in pursuit of my own self-interest seemed not only the best choice mechanically, but also the right choice." End quote. In Hocking's words, the ludic contract of BioShock is seek power and you will progress. But personally, in my mind, the ludic contract of BioShock is, holy shit, stay alive, don't die. In Hawking's words, the narrative contract is, help Atlas and you will progress. But for me, it was some combination of, what the hell happened here, and holy shit, stay alive, don't die. So for me, there wasn't a terrific amount of self-reflective contemplation for the first section of the game, up until I was presented with the choice of the first little sister. And I'm going to play the important narrative elements of this part to refresh everyone on what it felt like.
It's a little one. Here's your chance to get some Adam.
Stay away from her, or it is you who will be shot next.
Easy now, Doctor. He's just looking for a wee bit of Adam. Just enough to get by.
I'll not have him hurt my little ones.
It's okay, lad. That's not a child. Not anymore, it ain't. Dr. Tenenbaum saw to that.
Bitte do not hurt her. Have you no heart?
Aye, that's a pretty sermon coming from the Gulu. Cooked up them creatures in the first place. Took fine little girls and turned them into that, didn't you? Listen to me, boyo. You won't survive with any of those things are carrying. Are you prepared to trade your life, the lives of my wife and child, for Tenenbaum's little friggin' life?
Here! There is another way. Use this. From their torment. I will make it to be worth your while. Somehow.
So, you've got Tenenbaum, who threatens to kill you if you hurt the little ones, and Atlas, who expresses a cold detachment from the little sisters. This is the first time I had to ask myself a question when I played, because this isn't an insane person running at me with a lead pipe. This is a child that poses no immediate threat to my survival. So that question for me was, stay alive, but at what cost? Which sounds cliche, but it speaks directly to the narrative and ludic contract that I as a player established for myself. I chose to spare the little sisters because, among other reasons, I was immersed in the game and I simply wouldn't kill a child that poses no immediate threat to me. I'll stay alive on my own terms if I can. But when we juxtapose the scene with the first little sister against Hawking's self-imposed contracts, it becomes obvious why he would harvest them. His contracts are, seek power and you will progress, and also, help Atlas and you will progress. Both of those are strengthened by harvesting the little sister, following the preference conveyed by Atlas and also gaining more power for himself along the way. Hawking detached himself from the little sisters, but he claimed the game made him do that. Clint, my man, the game didn't make you do anything. You wrote your own ludonarrative contracts, and you played to them accordingly. For me, my contract was derailed by the addition of the little sister, but for Clint, the choice was clear. Now, keep in mind, on a moment-to-moment basis, I doubt either of us were thinking about this actively while playing the game. These contracts I'm describing are helpful anecdotes for how the two of us approach the experience of a video game. And this is what I'm trying to get at. Hawking describes ludonarrative dissonance as a problem for developers, a pitfall that will always create a barrier of bullshit in between the gameplay and the story. But for me, ludonarrative dissonance isn't that at all. It can be, sure, but only within the confines of an otherwise poorly structured game. To me, as a player, ludonarrative dissonance is my problem. To explain what I mean by this, I'm going to talk about another kind of mental dissonance that we all experience: cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a psychological phenomena that everybody encounters in their lives. It happens whenever you discover that your actions suddenly don't align with your beliefs. and it works like this. Imagine you have a friend, and this friend, for whatever reason, claims not to like anime. But you do. So one day you're watching one of your favorites and your friend happens to hear the show from the other room and starts watching it with you. After you binge a whole season, you might point out to them that they just thoroughly enjoyed watching an anime with you. And now they realize there's a dissonance in their mind. Their belief that anime is bad was just disregarded in the action of them enjoying one. So their brain tries to resolve it. It could do this in a number of ways, some healthier than others. They may just accept that they enjoyed the show and change their belief, moving on believing that anime can be really good. Or they might retroactively convince themselves that they didn't actually enjoy what they watched, therefore maintaining their belief that anime is bad. Or they might, for some reason, argue with you about how what they just watched wasn't really an anime, maintaining both their belief and their position and saying that their experience fit outside of it. Everyone has done this one way or another in some kind of circumstance at some point in their lives. It's a very well understood neurological phenomena that every healthy brain experiences. And I bring it up because it's simply the real world version of ludonarrative dissonance. So what Hawking is describing as a pitfall unique to the experience of video games is actually a pitfall in human behavior. Ludonarrative dissonance is as subjective as the player, because the dissonance occurs when the player's interpretation of the story is at odds with the player's interpretation of the gameplay. But just like with cognitive dissonance, you can resolve this without calling the game bad. The thing that I love about BioShock is that I think the revelation that Atlas has been controlling your choices all along creates a very intentional dissonance. I just think that Hawking chose to resolve it by criticizing the game rather than assessing his situation differently. I remember the effect that the twist of the first game had on me, and it was pretty incredible because I knew that I was feeling the exact same mix of emotions that Jack was feeling. Think about that. Think about how astonishing that is. I criticized myself for not considering where Jack came from, for not looking more closely at the clues all around me, not questioning the tattoos on Jack's wrists, or the motive of Andrew Ryan for supposedly killing Atlas's family. My freedom was a lie, it was an illusion, but I didn't have my wits about me enough to question it. We remember BioShock because at that one moment we were thinking Jack's thoughts, and Jack was experiencing a massive cognitive dissonance. This is where Hawking's experience and my experience diverge. Hawking resolved this dissonance by escaping back into himself. He got frustrated with the game and pointed out the very same limitation that BioShock uses so effectively in its storytelling. And he does this almost vindictively to critique the game. Quote, "The game openly mocks us for having willingly suspended our disbelief in order to enjoy it. BioShock is not our Citizen Kane, but it does, more than any game I've ever played, show us how close we are to achieving that milestone. BioShock reaches for it and slips." It didn't slip. Not for me at least, because I resolved the same dissonance differently. I kept playing, and as the shock from the realization set in, I felt numb as I woke up in Tenenbaum's safe house, and I followed the little sister there as I was instructed to. And that's when my dissonance was resolved. I looked around at all the other little sisters who populated the orphanage, and I realized that Atlas never made that decision for me. If my playthrough had gone differently and I had harvested the little girls, there would be much fewer here. That's one way in which the game is deliberately non-linear. The rescued little sisters will thank you for saving them if you did, and if you harvested them, then the few that survive in this safe house will fear you. And so, my dissonance was resolved. I did have freedom. Not very much, but I made choices that had a tangible effect on the game. And even though I knew it was still only one or two possible outcomes, it was enough to keep me going. I decided to save them, and that was the decision I wanted to see through because it was authentically my own. And that's the decision that carried me to the end of the game. If you recall earlier, Hawking chose to harvest at least some of the little sisters he encountered. And this fact alone may have made him feel slighted by the experience of BioShock and that the game should have handled things differently, which I find a bit amusing. because that's a very common coping mechanism for immoral decision making. Calling the world a cruel and unforgiving place isn't too far off from saying the game openly mocks us. It's a knee-jerk deflection, and it's a difficult one to outright disprove. But hopefully, I've succeeded. Thank you. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm sorry that this wasn't uploaded sooner. The Iceberg was just such a massive energy investment, and I had a hard time getting back into the swing of things after putting together something so long. So I just wanted to throw in some closing remarks on ludonarrative dissonance, because I said in the video that there were ways in which I agree with Clint and ways in which I disagree. And that's very true, but I think I focused on the ways in which I disagree for the sake of the video, and that's just bad practice. So let me say that the concept of ludonarrative dissonance is brilliant, and while I disagree with Clint's application of it to BioShock, I think there are absolutely games where devs could do a better job of marrying gameplay and story. And I think there are even games where ludonarrative dissonance isn't present at all. And I think there's a potential video in breaking down how the developers of those games managed to accomplish that. I also have thoughts on how a morality system creates dissonances in games, and how in most RPGs there's an active conversation between developers and players. And finally, Ken Levine has talked about how he would have done BioShock 1 differently with more time and money. So I'm not saying that the game couldn't be improved and it's perfect and flawless. I'm just saying that what's there works as intended, and the concept behind BioShock is, to me, completely brilliant and fresh, and smacked me really hard in the face the first time I played it. Now, in regards to the future of my channel, I've included a survey in the description which will help me get a sense of what everyone might like to see from me. I'm an art student and I like to keep myself challenged with new things, so I like working with my hands. Modding electronics is a new hobby. I enjoy VR as a medium. And there's really no limit on what I might try to take on as a personal project. So that leaves us with two options. One is I can record everything I do as I do it and make a wide array of videos, stream on Twitch whenever I play something, run an active social media, and all that jazz. Or I can keep on making content exactly like this, consistently, but much less often. Probably once a month or so, because I'll be busy with all that other stuff that I will still do, just privately. So I'm super curious to hear your thoughts on that, because I want to strike a healthy balance. So feel free to leave any insight you have in the comments as well. But if not, I mean, I'd just really appreciate if you did that survey, because I think that's really going to help me narrow down what my channel is going to look like. Whew. Okay, so that's it for me. Please, I hope you have a wonderful day, and thanks again for watching. Yeah, that's all I've got. Let's build something we love here on YouTube. I'm sick of the algorithm. I'm sick of creators that I like kind of changing gears and not doing what I want. So I really want the discourse between me and all of you wonderful people to be wide open. So thanks again.